The Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Here.
Mr. Bateman?
Here.
Mr. Blair?
Here.
Mr. Butler?
Here.
Mr. Hart?
Here.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Here.
Mr. Pink?
Here.
What kind is it? Dutch.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. That was a long time since our last ones. With us tonight, we have our newest canine, evidently. We have our Fire Chief, Ott Huber, Director of Finance, Mark Medler, Clerk of Council, Misty Brents, City Manager, Dave Kennedy, City Solicitor, Joe Braun, Assistant City Manager, Tom Smith, and Police Chief, Sean Ray. We also have former council members, Pam Gross, Pat Mays, Neil Ori, and Todd Osborne. The president of our school board, Loveland City School District, is here. Kathy Lorenz, also the president of Little Miami River Chamber Alliance, CC Collins. So thank you to all of you for being here and everyone else that is here tonight. Without further ado, I think we should accommodate our newest officer. Chief?
Yeah, if you want to go front. So thank you, Mayor, Council. As you know, we always present new officers to Council. It's a wonderful thing to do, and this time it's just a little bit different. We have Officer Cruz, who we're going to present for swearing in today. Cruz is a 2-year-old Belgian Malinois. We selected him from a military breeding program in Kentucky for his relaxed, and as you can tell, his relaxed and playful personality. He is still a puppy, so you'll have to forgive him a little bit. Officer Kyle Biebelhausen and Cruz have been training with Bulletproof Canine for the last 1.5 years. In the fall, he passed all Ohio Peace Officer training and LPT certification standards. Cruz's certifications include narcotics detection, tracking, apprehension, and handler protection. Cruz is particularly strong in detection work and loves to use his powerful nose. He is scheduled to compete in the National Canine Certifications this spring. Cruz is our 4th canine. 3 of them have been donated by the Matt Haverkamp Foundation. Nancy Haverkamp is here shooting a wonderful video up in the right corner for Cruz. Nancy, do you want to say hi? And thank you, Nancy. If I have this right, since 2005, the Matt Haverkamp Foundation has donated 83 canine dogs to agencies around greater Cincinnati. So thank you for that. Also, I want to briefly give a nod out to Kyle Biebelhausen. I said they've been training for 1.5 years. There's a ton of training, a ton of volunteer time, a ton of on your own time that these handlers have to go to. Kyle's put in a lot, so thanks for Kyle. But without delay, let's get him sworn in, Mayor.
Yeah, what are we doing here?
Looks like he's ready.
This will go smoothly, I'm sure. All right, I'll raise one. Canine Cruz, do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Ohio, the Charter and ordinances of the City of Loveland, and will obey the laws thereof, and will faithfully discharge the duties of canine police officer upon which you are about to enter?
Yeah.
Is that a yes?
Can we take that?
Thank you. Yeah. He'll only stay focused for a short time. So. Thank you.
Curious about that class.
Yeah, picture.
3-minute break, and council, let's get a quick picture with our newest officer. And you can be in it too, Kyle.
Yeah, exactly.
Glad somebody said everybody just look at the camera. Because I was kind of like looking at the camera. This is helpful.
Yeah, I know. That's cool.
Yeah, it was on.
All right, open forum. First, we have Sharon Scovanner.
Sharon Scovanner, I live at 155 Overlook Drive. At the last city council meeting, I was stopped short of being able to complete my statement because of time, just as I was getting to page 131 of the operating budget, which outlines the 2022 goals of building and zoning. And there it lists 11 goals, but most notable to me were goal number 1, which talks about development of a parking garage, which at a later date I'll talk more about. But more interesting to tonight's debate is number 9, which states, finalize the annexation and facilitate the application and building process for a single-family housing development on East State Route 48. What application? I thought Mayor Bailey said there wasn't one. Mayor Bailey is either uninformed, confused, naive, or trying to hide the facts that the Annex Grailville property will indeed be developed into a single-family housing development. It's in the city's own document. This is the document where it says, in the city's own document, that this is going to happen. If somebody is trying to scare residents, as Mayor Bailey has accused Mr. Butler of doing, she is directing her animosity in the wrong direction. For over a year now, Dries has been promoting this development as a fait accompli. I've spoken personally with Dries, new home specialist Amy Schmidt, and toured Elliott Farm and was told that the Grailville site will be laid out exactly the same, with 1/4 and 1/3 acre lots, even though the annexation resolution specifically calls for 1 acre lots. Apparently, Dries believes that they have gotten assurances from somebody in Loveland city governance that they will be able to develop as they have already outlined. If this is not true, why hasn't the mayor told Dries to stop publishing inaccurate information? Mr. Butler was merely stating what has been in the press for months. Thank goodness the citizens of Loveland have Mr. Butler speaking the truth and making us aware of what is being proposed. If Mayor Bailey wants to do what's best for the citizens of Loveland every time, she wouldn't have voted to change the zoning for Blossom Hill, nor would she allow 200 homes to be built at Grailville, which will overwhelm our schools, roads, and city services. Also at the last meeting, the mayor spoke about her committee appointments. These are my observations and why the appointment process needs to be reviewed. One person serving on 2 committees lives in Sims Township. 2 people live in Miami Township. 1 person lives in Goshen Township. 1 person is on 2 committees that has trouble making meetings. 1 person was appointed to a committee that didn't apply, and that same person serves on a 2nd committee. We have at least 5 people who serve on more than 1 committee. We have no committees to address the most pressing issues of the city, traffic and parking, and I would happily volunteer to serve on both of those committees. There are no females on 6 of the committees. People that I personally know applied to be on 12 committees, including 6 requests by my husband and me. None of us were chosen for any committee. There is not 1 member of planning and zoning from Warren County, which is where the majority of development has been taking place, and one of the excuses that Mayor Bailey gave for removing Mr. Butler from planning and zoning. Mr. Butler served admirably on both planning and zoning and the Warren County Municipal League. Because Mr. Butler had the audacity to disagree with the mayor, she spitefully removed him from both committees. The animosity the mayor showed toward a fellow newly elected council member at the last meeting was outrageous. This type of behavior by the mayor, while not surprising, has been what we have been warning about for months. We live in a democracy, and that is how the city of Loveland operates as well. Just because the majority feels one way does not mean the minority has to agree with them. Mayor Bailey did exactly that in 2017 when she spoke out against tearing down the city building. Council is not an autocratic organization. This false narrative that Mr. Butler has no right to express his views about the parking garage is ridiculous. Every member of council can and should speak to whomever they choose to make the voices of their constituents known. Let's be clear, Mr. Butler was very vocal about his opposition to the parking garage and the annexation during the election and was reelected overwhelmingly. The citizens are who Mr. Butler represents, not 6 members of council. Rather than taking cheap political shots to sabotage Mr. Butler, the mayor should work positively, trying to convince him and the thousands of voters who supported him that her positions are correct and arrived at by open, transparent, thoughtful reflection of the voters' concerns. I yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Scovanner.
Thank you, Mrs. Scovanner. Mr. Scovanner?
Tom Scovanner, 155 Overlook Drive. I apologize for my voice this evening as I'm getting over a cold after my recent trip to Dallas in support of the UC football team and their wonderful season this year. And I hope everyone has a healthy, especially healthy, and happy new year. As this new year begins, I once again am asking this council to start by pausing this Type 2 annexation of the Grail property. At the last meeting, Mr. Braun spoke that the council would have to accept the annexation as required by Ohio law. This is slightly an inarticulate statement. The council does not have to accept this annexation. Occasionally, lawyers like Joe and I, we stumble over our words. What is the requirement is for the annexation to go forward, the council must accept it. But if the council doesn't accept it, the annexation doesn't go forward. That is a more accurate statement of the situation we are facing. We were told by the mayor that this Type 2 annexation is only for a vacant field, and by doing this, we will be able to control Loveland's future. We are told that there is no plan pending, and we don't know if a vacant field will be developed. But we do know a plan is pending, and so does the city. Dries has been open about their plans to purchase this land and develop it. Dries has even sent to the city of Loveland, it's provided a concept drawing of this development to the city. This concept drawing that Dries provided, they've also sent to real estate agents throughout the region touting their next new development. So we, the citizens of Loveland, are not being told the truth by the mayor and by others. Transparency in governing is essential. Mr. Bateman, you spoke very well about that at the last meeting. Withholding information from the public, denying open true facts, those are not the building blocks of transparency. The mayor said at the last meeting in support of the Type 2 annexation that she would not do the politically expedient thing, and yet that is what she is doing. Again, in support of this Type 2 annexation, she says she wants to control the city's future. If the real goal is to control the potential development of this land to protect the city's future, then I propose that a motion should be brought up to buy the land. The city could then explore various options, keeping some or all of the land as green space, as the Clermont County and Miami Township is doing with adjoining property to the Grail. Maybe someday other options will arise and Loveland would be in total, complete control of those options. Instead, this council is being asked to annex this land, knowing full well that Dries will develop this property. And what kind of community do they want to develop? Well, they are transparent about their plans. They want in excess of 200 homes on 1/3 to 1/4 acre lots. Even though the resolution that you are proposing to do is for 1 acre lots, Dries wants this change. I know this because I've read Dries' material. I've personally talked to Dries representatives. I've toured the current 200 home development that they want to model this new development off of. This is the truth, and that's being transparent. This development that Dries wants will increase pressure on Loveland schools, require Loveland to hire more employees in general, more police, more fire, more EMS. The homes will be taxed by both Loveland and Miami Township. Double taxed homes will create probably an anti-tax levy block that will vote against levies in the future, levies that will probably be necessary for Loveland schools for the pressures that these new homes will add to the burden on Loveland schools that already exists, plus our fire and EMS departments. A recent history of Amelia, Ohio comes to mind. Double taxing led to the citizens voting to disband Amelia. Amelia, Ohio no longer exists. I doubt that this will cause Loveland to vote itself out of existence, but levy campaigns will become more difficult and less successful. I've previously talked about the terrible impact of adding hundreds of cars to downtown Loveland traffic at least twice a day, and the obvious reduction in the quality of life to Loveland that this will create. So I won't repeat those details, but that will happen. I'm reminded of an old English proverb attributed to Jonathan Swift. There are none so blind as those who will not see. The most deluded people are those who choose to ignore what they already know. As I told Mr. Blair when he met with me a few days ago, and I appreciated that, I'll make a prediction tonight. If you approve this Type 2 annexation, Dries will file for a zoning change to reduce the minimum lot sizes below 1 acre, and thereby allowing more homes to be developed. The zoning committee, unfortunately, will approve that change. And then that zoning request will come before this council, and I fear will be approved by this council. If I'm wrong, I will come before this council and openly state that I was wrong. I have no problem with that. But I don't think I have to make that apology. Please do not vote to accept this Type 2 annexation.
So I'm just going to address this notion that we've somehow lied about what is happening here. I think you actually proved my point. Dries will have to apply. They haven't done that yet. They can't do that yet. Property's not in the city of Loveland yet. Sure, they sent a concept plan. There are dozens of concept plans that were sent to us over the years for the property up on Butterworth that is now a Homerama site. Doesn't mean any of them went through. Doesn't mean most of them never saw the light of day, ever went to planning and zoning. The first step here is for us to get this property in Loveland so that we then can decide what, if anything, goes there and what, if any, changes to the zoning we will do for that property. Nothing has been approved. Nothing is currently pending. It is perfectly, completely accurate and truthful to say that we do not yet have an application from Dries pending before the city because we can't. The property's not in the city yet. When it gets here, then we will take the process that has been in place for years and that works. And that's when everyone will get their say on what should be on that property. But not now. Now is when we're simply getting it into the city so that we get to make the decision. I mean, you said that at the end of what you said. So I think we're saying the same thing other than you're saying I'm lying about it. What I'm saying is entirely accurate as to what we're doing here. And I hope to heck that the annexation does go through tonight, because that is what's best for this city. Ms. Lukens?
I'm Miss Kim Lukens, and I live at 142 Hounds Run in Brandywine. It is with pleasure that I am here. It is a new year. It is in hope that we can work together in common witness to God's love for our city and the world. We are called to draw on this time of common prayer in order to strengthen our commitment to respond to the fears and hopes of the people here, God's people. We know there's a lot of fears and hopes. I've heard it for the last 2 months here. You're just talking about it. I mean, there is obviously fears. We believe, or I believe, hopefully we believe that God has created us as human beings for fellowship and for unity with one another. My plea here is for somehow to please come together with more unity. We understand that our churches have been moved together by Jesus Christ. My hope is for Loveland City that we all may become as one. I know that, let's see, let me find it, that I hope there's somebody that's watching this out here, the YouTube or whatever or something, because I hope that these churches hear this. But we have Full Gospel Assembly, Loveland Christian Church, St. Margaret of York, St. Columban, Chaps A, Brigham, St. George Orthodox Church, Prince of Peace Lutheran Church, Loveland Heights Church of Christ, North Star Community of Grace, Loveland United Methodist Church, New Hope Baptist Church, and I know there's more. And I would just hope that with all this Christianity here in this lovely city, that our fears could decrease and that the hopes of what's best for all of us would increase. So with that being said, to be perfectly honest with you, this is what I think 5 qualities of a good leader are. I am hoping to maybe enter a master's in ethical leadership in Thomas More, so I grabbed this from their stuff. 1, self-awareness, prioritize personal development. I wonder if any of you all do that, just curious. Focus on developing others. Encourage strategic thinking, innovation, and action. Ethical and civic-minded, and practice cross-cultural communication and humility. So the points that I wanted to talk about were strategic thinking. All I can say is I know that there has been quite a bit of public awareness through emails, through the Business Courier, through Loveland City Life, there's the designs that you were speaking about, Mayor Kathy Bailey. They're obviously out there. And I just wonder why it's so important to have that land here in Loveland City. I've really not heard of any concepts out there. None of you all have even talked about whether there would be another way to be innovative with that property if the property was annexed. And I don't know if that's supposed to come after annexation, before annexation. I don't know when you all usually do something like that. I agree with all these things that these people are saying about the amount of homes and the traffic and the congestion and the quality of life and the schools and things like that. Do you all need to market different ways or think of different ways that you could use that land? I don't know. I can tell you that I have an idea. It's a homestead idea, and I don't know if you all have heard of that, but do you, Kathy, do you market? Do you hire people to market the world on different ways to keep Grailville in the spirit that they're in with the whole, there's 4 things, they don't want, as far as, sustainability. I talked about sustainability when I was running for Loveland City Council, and sustainability is not to bring in equipment like this. There's all this equipment. I can show pictures of all the equipment, all the moving of dirt, all the sewers and all the stuff that you have to put in for development. It makes me sick. I have to look at it day after day.
Thank you, Ms. Lukens. I'm sorry, but your time is up.
Yeah, I wasn't quick enough. Well,
Thank you.
no, thank you.
Cece Collins.
Hi, my name's Cece Collins. I'm the president of the Little Miami River Chamber Alliance, and I'm here to talk about the Valentine program for 2022. This past Saturday, along with some of the folks in this room, Mark, thank you for being there. Tim, Dave, thank you so much for taking time. We kicked off the 2022 Valentine program that's very traditional here in the Loveland area. And along with that, we announced the 2022 Valentine lady, who's going to be Jeannie Schumacher again this year due to COVID. So she's not here tonight. I'm just simply announcing that. But you will see her around town. And then also had the privilege of unveiling the Valentine art. And I'm going to hold up, I don't have the big one with me, but I'm going to hold up the card real quick. So this is the art for this year. And Nancy Sullivan created the artwork for this year. So the artwork each year gets turned into a note card, and folks purchase these note cards and send them around the world. And also, the Valentine ladies stamp them with the commemorative stamp as they come through. The Valentine ladies, some of which are here tonight, thank you, Kay Bolin, Kathy Lorenz, and Ann Fowler, and Debbie Murray. Thank you all for being here tonight, representing the Valentine ladies. We really appreciate you all. They get elected based on volunteer work, what they've done in the community. So we're just very appreciative of them. If we could give them a round of applause, and Jimmy should. A couple things really quick. We're very excited about the Hearts of Fire. I'm sure that's going to be discussed later on. But that kind of takes us up to, we have a breakfast where we honor all of the Valentine ladies in the program on February 11th. That will be at the Oasis at 8:30. It's a half an hour later, a whole half an hour later to sleep in. So that'll be at the Oasis. We hope you all can join us. It's a great breakfast. We have a poetry contest where students, adults, and just some of the community members all submit poetry in different age categories, and there's winners of those categories, and then they present that art at that breakfast as well. So it's a lot of fun. It's just very much in the tradition of Loveland. Then also the Valentine ladies will be stamping these cards, which most of them are stamped already because they worked so hard already. But any Valentine that comes to the post office that anybody wants them to stamp, there's no cost. And that starts January 31st and goes through February 11th as well. So I think I got most of it. The poetry contest, if anybody wants one of the big hearts that go in the yards, it's like a yard sign, you can do that for your significant other or friend or family. And you can contact the chamber and we can help you with that as well. These cards are for sale almost in all the retail shops around here, and in some of the Union Savings and Kroger as well, so, and the chamber. So we're very excited about it this year, and we're really excited about having something traditional with something brand new, which is the Hearts of Fire, that I think that will be a lot of fun. So thank you for letting us discuss this tonight and share this with everybody. We appreciate it. Good night.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here, Valentine ladies. We're always graced by your presence. And you won't upset us if you leave at this point. All right. Next is review and approval of minutes from the December 14th, 2021 City Council meeting. Are there any corrections to those minutes? Misty, I did find one, but I meant to tell you ahead of time. On page 12, just the word right, it should be, what Mr. Braun said is that it would be inappropriate as it's not ripe, R-I-P-E. That's just a Scribner's. Any other changes anyone have? Can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes. All right, next we have a second reading of an ordinance. We'll go ahead and read the ordinance.
Ordinance establishing Chapter 1158 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Loveland titled Historic Preservation and Planning District Design Review Guidelines.
Any comments or questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-1 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
All right, read the next ordinance, please.
Ordinance establishing the compensation and classification for the police captain and repealing ordinance 2021-44.
Any comments or questions on this? Mr. Butler?
Yeah, I'm going to vote to approve the ordinance, but just an observation that looking at the city's budget materials from our November or whatever it was meeting, over the last 4 years, we've had a very dramatic increase in personnel costs. I'm confident that the chief has outlined a solid rationale for this captain's position, but I think as a whole, the city needs to focus on our personnel costs because they seem to be going up pretty significantly and pretty far in excess of the rate of inflation over these past 4 years. So I would just ask all the department heads, Mr. Kennedy, the chief, et cetera, to focus on that, and because our budget seems to be moving much faster than the rate of inflation in personnel.
Mr. Kennedy?
Tim, I just wanted to point out in 2021, the way the pay periods ended up, one of the reasons is in 2021, there was one whole entire extra pay period. And the other item that has impacted what you see on paper would be the SROs, because what we're not seeing is in turn the money the city receives from the school district and from St. Columban. I'm not saying that's 100%, but I did think I needed to point out that 2021 was a bit of an anomaly in that the way the year played out, there was actually a full extra pay period. And when we hired, we had 3 SROs out there, so that's 1.5 officers upon which you're seeing the expenditures outward from the city towards the SROs, but what we're not seeing is in there is the revenue from St. Columban and school district. I'm not saying that covers it all, but I just thought that should be brought out. And typically when we budget for a new employee, such as the captain's position, we inflate everything to the highest, full family plan, everything, not knowing who the person will be and what his health insurance modes are. It doesn't answer everything, but there is a corresponding revenue for some of it. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-2 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
I will say I put this first on the resolutions on purpose when we do the agenda, and I thought it was important. I tried hard to follow as close as possible, section 709.04, which would be the accepting and rejecting, and but I did want to just go real quickly. I just wanted to touch briefly on, we just wanted to point out that between Obanaville and State Route 48 in total, the Grail owned 209.037 acres. And there's a couple of reasons why I thought this was relevant. First of all, 13.73 of the land that Grail owned fronting Obanaville was already located within the city corporation limits. And I try to designate everything with the map. Of that total, also, they sold 99.664 acres to the Clermont County Park District. I bring that up for a reason because, for a couple of reasons, because I will and likely in the near future be bringing forward legislation to do the annexation of that particular piece of those 2 parcels. That particular land was purchased by the Clermont County Park District from the Clermont County, from the Grailville use what's called Clean Ohio funding. I'm no expert on anything, but I did use very similar funds in New Richmond after the '97 flood, and I can tell you that with that, and I actually have copies of the deed restrictions that were put on that property, in perpetuity, that land, the 99.664 acres of land, will be parkland from now until eternity. It is in the deeds, and they would jeopardize all of their Clean Ohio funding by doing so. I'm not saying that comforts anything, I just think it's important. I spoke to the Clermont County Park District. Why are they not a part of this annexation request? Because there is a requirement by law, and I know that you must touch a certain percentage of the corporation limits. So if you imagine taking a square, it's a piece of land, and you go 100, 100, 100, 100, and then you would times that by 5%, that land, the land requesting annexation must touch a minimum of 5% of the corporation boundaries. If the city votes to annex the property that is subject to annexation right now, that land then we would be allowed to annex in all of the Clermont County Park District, thus assuring almost 100 acres of perpetual green space. I just wanted to bring that up so there's no surprises. I've not been able to move forward on that annexation because of that. That being said, In my memo, I tried to give a pretty good detail of what got us here, point by point, bullet by bullet. The reason the time frame is, and we discussed this at a past council meeting, is that on November 1st, following all the other action by the city council, Misty, our city clerk, formally received notification from the Clermont County Park District on their action. What that is relevant for is that started the requirement of the 60 days, 0.70904. So no sooner than 60 days and no later than 120 days from that period of time, the city shall, if the legislation fails to pass an ordinance petition within a period of 100 days after the documents are laid by the auditor or clerk, it is considered rejected. So up till the point where we hit 60 days, not only 60 days, first regular scheduled council meeting of those 60 days, which is January 11th, because as you know, obviously that would have been January 1st. So that is what brought us here today, and that is why the clock is what it is. I will note, and obviously if you look at the annexation plat, you'll see that we're also, which is fairly standard operating procedure for the city, is we're annexing a part of the right-of-way of State Route 48. Why is that? Obviously, over time, the city has annexed State Route 48. So that allows the city to control our own utilities, which lie in that, allows us to control everything related to that portion, which will belly right up to the portion of State Route 48 that's already in the city along by St. Columban. I will tell you that when I got here in 2014, many gray hairs before this, one of the first things I dealt with was a resident who was in the city of Loveland on State Route 48, was having cars projectile into his front yard, and I'm not exaggerating. Chief Huber can vouch for me. It took the city 3 to 4 years to get the guardrail approved to stop the vehicle from vehicles driving high rates of speed from projectiling into the front of this gentleman's house. Yes, that means we will have to pave State Route 48, and we're adding to the total of 107 lane miles the city has. But we also can tap into the urban paving program to accommodate this. So we weigh that out. We have utilities in that area. It made sense for the city to also take over the right-of-way. That's common sense. That's very standard. I wanted that in full transparency. So what is in front of the city is the 97.387 acres. And what that is basically all of the Grail-owned property of which they completed the petition, and roughly 1.747 acres of right-of-way, just land. So per section 709.04, it being 60 days since such time, I prepared the resolution with the required exhibits attached to it, which is Exhibit A, which is the actual action taken by the Clermont County Commissioners, and Exhibit B, which is both the legal description and the formal annexation plat.
All right, any comments or questions? Mr. Butler?
At the last council meeting, there were some very derogatory and misleading statements made about me and my positions regarding annexation. Some of these comments at that meeting indicated that I made patently false statements, that I unnecessarily confused and upset residents, that I engaged in and promoted fear and rumor mongering, and it was plainly stated I did this solely to gain some sort of political advantage in the recent election. It was also stated that my questions and statements about annexation were based solely on rumor and speculation. Because my integrity was clearly called into question, and because I believe it is important for the people of Loveland to know the true facts, I want to set this record straight. First, to understand the level of information which is and was available about this property, we need to go back almost 12 months to late January 2021. At that time, a real estate friend of mine contacted me by email and said, "Hey, were you aware of this new development at the Grailville?" And I said I was not. She sent me a site plan and said that the folks developing, the company developing this property said that there would be 200 home sites with different styles and sections. I actually shared this email at that time
with two of my colleagues on council. And one of them, Andy Bateman, is still a council member. Hopefully Andy will remember that. I thought they might be interested in that because of their proximity to the Grail location. Other than that, I felt like this property was in Miami Township, had no involvement in the city of Loveland. It was an interesting fact, but other than that, not relevant to the city. In March of 2021, the same company posted on its website the following article: "A new lifestyle community set to debut in Loveland, Miami Township." In this article, the company outlines in detail its plans for developing the Grail site. The same article can be found on the developer's website today. A few days later, the Cincinnati Business Courier ran a 4-page article providing in detail the developer's plans to build a neighborhood of approximately 200 homes. This article outlines price points and lot sizes, as well as the amenities associated with the property. A day or so later, the developer ran another article on its blog site discussing again in detail its plans to develop the Grail property. It says the developer set to develop a master planned community at Grailville. This is still 5 months before this council was asked to consider the annexation of this property. As far as anyone knew, this would be a development in Miami Township. In its June 2021 edition, Loveland Lifestyle magazine ran a story stating, "It's official, Dries Homes has purchased 100 acres from the Grail in Loveland to utilize for a 200-site development." You can find this again in the June 2021 edition of Loveland Lifestyle magazine. We are now 2 months before the prospect of the city of Loveland annexing this property was presented to city council. These articles and communications were not private to me. They were not rumors or speculation. They were a well-designed and coordinated marketing effort of the soon-to-be-developed property currently owned by the Grail. During this period, I received dozens of questions from citizens of Loveland about this development and what, if anything, it meant to the city. My response to those citizens was always along the lines of, "This is an interesting concept, but it's in Miami Township, and there's really nothing the city of Loveland can or should do about it." It was only in late August 2021 that the concept of annexing this property into the city of Loveland was presented to city council. So it was against this backdrop and coordinated communications and marketing effort that as an elected council member, I thought it was entirely appropriate and my responsibility to suggest that the city obtain information related to this annexation proposal, since we had been advised in numerous public forums and on the developer's blog site that this was to be a 200-home development. My view was that to not consider these issues was a dereliction of duty and not fair to the people of the city of Loveland. Now, this view was not shared by my colleagues on city council, which was their prerogative. However, the notion that I was in some way engaging in fear tactics, rumor mongering, or rank speculation about the property is simply not supported by the facts. The timing of this marketing campaign was long before anyone submitted a petition for election or re-election. My position and discussion on annexation was not a political game or any effort to scare the people of the city of Loveland. The information about this property and its intended use was publicly communicated and widely disseminated. This was not private or confidential. It was made publicly available to any citizen with a laptop and an internet connection. As noted by Ms. Scovanner, it is also apparent that this information was available to the city of Loveland, since our own building department stated that one of its 2022 goals was to finalize the annexation and facilitate the application and building process for a single-family housing development on East State Route 48. These goals were developed in the summer and fall of 2021, so you can decide for yourself what facts were available at that time. Frankly, my intent in this matter was to let the matter proceed through the review and voting process on this council, and then on to planning and zoning, where any finalized plans would be submitted and reviewed. It was only after the December 14th council meeting, in which my motives and integrity were called into question, that I thought it was necessary to provide this information for you, the public, and citizens of the city of Loveland to review and consider. At all times, I've acted in what I believe to be the best interests of the people of the city of Loveland, and in response to concerns raised by those same citizens. I will continue to do this as a member of council. I urge my colleagues to do the same and hope that since we have now heard both sides of this issue, we can move forward on behalf of the citizens of the City of Loveland. I truly hope that this project, assuming that this annexation moves forward, in whatever iteration is presented first to Planning and Zoning and then to City Council, proves to be an asset for the City of Loveland for many years to come. And thank you for your time.
Any other comments? Mr. Baker.
So I made a comment, I guess it was the last meeting that I'd share some thoughts on annexation. And so I think, we've talked a lot about this and the specter of development, I suppose, was raised throughout the early conversations. And we sort of righted that ship knowing that it was going to go through it needed to go through the proper procedure. And so essentially what we're really talking about is accepting the annexation of unimproved land from the Grail into the City of Loveland. And so, that just led me to start doing a little research and trying to think a little bit about annexation and the history of annexation in the City of Loveland. Why annex? What does that do for a city? And so some of the things that I found in the reading was really interesting, I found, and I'd like to share some of that with you today, if you don't mind. So I'm having trouble getting my tablet working. Basically, one of the articles I read was called Annexation and the Fiscal Fate of Cities. And so this was really all about the benefit that annexation has on a city's finances. So it was talking a lot about how in certain regions of this country, annexation is practically impossible because we're so built out, we're so developed in certain metropolitan areas that you're pretty much locked in your boundaries as they were set many, many years ago. So the annexation opportunities that we have here in the City of Loveland are really not to be taken for granted. It's a circumstance, just as the river and then the bike trail and all the great amenities that we have. We are fortunate due to our geography. And because we sit outside of the 275 belt and we're in 3 counties and we're sort of positioned in this area where we're in a sort of quasi-rural area with suburban history and long-term occupation and establishment over 200 years, 225 years, 250 years, I think. So the elasticity of a city's boundaries is really something that shouldn't be taken for granted. And the ability of a political subdivision to essentially capture the growth of the county or counties where it resides is something that is quite unique. The study that I was reading is a Brookings Institute study, and then it cites a Carnegie Mellon Center for Economic Development study that intimated that the more that a region is broken up into multiple governments is actually going to have a detrimental effect to having racially and economically segregated housing markets and slow rates of economic growth. So that I work down in Norwood area, Roselawn, Bond Hill, and I drive around a lot to go to lunch, and I'm seeing Elmwood Place, St. Bernard, Norwood, the city of Cincinnati. And as you're moving through those different neighborhoods, you see a huge break in the different quality of housing. You've got the really stately old homes of Bond Hill, Roselawn. You go into Elmwood Place, St. Bernard. It's from the same time period, but it's a different municipality. You're not in the city of Cincinnati anymore. You're in a separate. So it just made me think a little bit about how if we're looking to try to create a character of the City of Loveland, then annexation is a tool by which we can continue to do that and continue to imprint some of the qualities of housing, which we'd like to see for the future generations of the city. The survey went on to talk a little bit about the relationship that annexation has with bond ratings. And so of the 106 cities that were surveyed, all of them that expanded their boundaries even by as little as 15% had no less than an A3 bond rating. And so again, that's something that we can do to protect our citizens by establishing higher bond ratings. I don't really want to touch on the increasing the tax base argument, although I think it's one that's worth discussing. Whatever happens to this property, if it does become annexed into the city of Loveland, that could be something that raised. But as it is, it's vacant land, and so it's not going to do much from an income tax basis unless it goes back to the days of working farm. It starts to raise. We start to get some income tax from that. In general, this really got me thinking a little bit about, change. It's bittersweet. It's constant. But it's something that we're forced to live with. And annexation is a means by which a municipality can grow, it can change, and it can be elastic. And for our city to accept this application of 97.387 acres from Grailville, it's really substantial. It's not a small act. I think all of us here recognize this is pretty significant as it relates to what this will do to our boundaries and the future of our city. But it's really not that surprising either when you think about our boundaries in Clermont County. If you take a look at where our boundaries end on the eastern edge of the city of Loveland, there's a big chunk missing where Grailville currently sits. So that got me thinking, let's take a look at the history of annexation in Clermont County over the last 20 years. And so as I started looking at this, there's different reasons for these, but just going through the list. Recorded in the Clermont County Auditor's Office in 2020, May of 2020, through Ordinance 2020-18, 3.8 acres over by St. Columban. In January of 2019, for City's Ordinance 2018-122, almost 6 acres at the Children's Meeting House, also next to the Grail property we're talking about. I think that's substantial. In March, then you drop back about 14 years, March of 2005, 5.38 acres, the Kilcoyne property that's near the Huntington subdivision in Clermont County, 8.38 acres in February of 2004. These are all related, the next are all related to Cedar Woods, the Cedar Drive development. The Gilchrist property in 2001, 15 acres. Almost 5 acres in 2003 near St. Columban. White Pillar Cemetery, 0.16 acres in 2001, and 11.16 acres in March of 2001. So that's 55 acres of annexed property into the city of Loveland in Clermont County over the last 20 years. So doing 97.387 in one fell swoop, it's a big deal. And I look at it as a big opportunity because we have the opportunity to, as we've said in the past, have some control, execute some control over this as we go through the process to do what's best for the city. But we also have to recognize that we don't control everything. This is still, at the end, a property that's owned by Grail. They're a private owner, and they're obviously undergoing some kind of change themselves. If they weren't undergoing a change, they would just keep it as it is. But they're selling some to Clermont County Parks District over the last several years. They clearly want to do something to change something about the character of this 97.387 acres. If they didn't want to do that, if they were, in good shape and they wanted to continue to be the fabled institution that it sort of has. I mean, at least in our neighborhood, Grail is definitely something that, from a historical context, is pretty special. And I agree with Mr. Butler that it's something that I hope the character and integrity of that is maintained with whatever its future may hold. But I just wanted to share some thoughts on why I think this is a very important vote today, and it's not to be taken lightly, but it's also really puts us on the precipice of a great opportunity, and we should be eager, and at least I am, to seize that opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bateman. Any other comment? No one else? All right, I guess what I would say is certainly over the last year or so been well aware of Dree's comments and their articles and what they've been talking about, what they want to put on that property. And maybe the difference between my approach and Mr. Butler's was I drowned out that noise because I considered it noise. And I thought every time I would see it or hear it or read it, to some degree, who do they think they are? Until that property is in this city, until either, if you keep it in Miami Township, if they change their zoning, okay. But they're asking us to annex into the city, and I'm thinking, well, you haven't gotten the zoning change you need to do that project yet. Might have been putting the cart before the horse a little bit. So I thought of what they were doing as concept, because that's all it is, and that's all it still is. That's great if that's what they think they would like to put on that property, but there's a process that this city follows. And in my mind, the important thing is that we get to be the ones to make that decision, which is why I'm flabbergasted that this issue of annexing this property has any consternation attached to it at all. This is a no-brainer in my mind. We are annexing a vacant field. Yes, the Grail would like to sell this property. Apparently there's an option to Dries to purchase the property. Dries has a concept of what they would like to put on that property. There's going to be something standing between Dries' plan, and that would be this council. That will be planning and zoning. That will be council. Because as it comes in, it will come in, I believe, as low density, which is 1 house per acre. Because we don't have an agricultural zone. Is that correct, Mr. Kennedy? And that's what it's currently zoned in Miami Township. So there's a process that has to be followed. And in my mind, we want to be the ones that are controlling that process and making the decision as to what we want have happen on that beautiful piece of property. I just don't think it's at all in the best interest of this city and its residents to leave it in the hands of Miami Township. This way, we annex this property, step 1. Step 2, Dries has to formally apply for whatever plan they have, which they have not yet done because they couldn't. Then starts our process that is in our charter, in our ordinances, that every other potential development has to follow. And we will let that process play out. But if we don't take this step, we're not at the table making this decision. So that's been my frustration throughout this entire 6 months, is that annexation has been equated with council has approved 200 acres, that's why they want to annex this, or 200 homes, that's why they want to annex this property. That is patently false statement. That is not true. And that's my problem, is I do think that has caused fear and concern among residents that wasn't necessary. Annex the property first, let Dries give us their best shot of what they would like to see happen there, and then let's all have a spirited discussion, including residents, of what we want to see happen. That's how it should proceed. But we have to take this step to make that happen rather than be bystanders. I do not think we need to be bystanders with what happened on that beautiful piece of property. I want to decide what happens there. I want this council and our planning and zoning and our residents to decide what should go there. And this is our first step. So that's my opinion on it. All right. Read the resolution, please.
Resolution accepting the annexation of land from Miami Township, Clermont County, Ohio, including 97.387 acres of land owned by the Grail.
Any comments, questions on the resolution itself? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
No.
Resolution 2022-3 is adopted by a vote of 6 to 1.
Thank you. Mr. Medler.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. To pay for fire and EMS services, the City of Loveland currently has 4 tax levies, with the last levy being approved by voters in 2014. The city's strategy has been to structure levies to provide sufficient funding for 5 years and then do everything in its power to last longer before needing another levy. The city and LSFD have done just that and the most recent levy has supported the city's contractual and operational needs for going on 8 years. Because the money brought in by levies stays static and does not inflate when a property's value increases, additional levies become necessary. This resolution is the first of 2 pieces of legislation necessary to place a levy on the May 3rd, 2022 ballot. The resolution authorizes staff to send a request to Hamilton County Auditor's Office certifying the city's current tax valuation and how much funding would be provided by a 1.75 mil levy. The information provided will also include Clermont and Warren County data. The city's Finance Commission discussed the need for a levy when it met earlier in 2021 and will have an updated discussion during its meeting, which is next Tuesday. With the information provided by Hamilton County, a second piece of legislation will be brought to City Council at the next meeting to officially authorize a levy and put it onto the ballot.
All right, any comments or questions for Mr. Medler or our fire chief? Mr. Butler?
Yeah, just to clarify, Mark, so this is just basically a ministerial step for the next vote of council, which would be actually to approve the placement of a levy on the ballot. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, and it'll give us the information of what the fiscal impact is.
How much money could be raised?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Hart?
I would like to commend Chief Huber and the city staff for taking a levy and stretching it well past its intended usage. But also, you know, to piggyback on what Mr. Butler said earlier in the meeting tonight, it is important to continue to make sure we're watching our budgets and making sure we're not increasing spending at too great a rate. I feel like with taking a levy and stretching it almost double its intended length, I think we're doing that. But just as an aside, just as a commentary, to continue to watch our expenses, and I think Chief Huber's doing a good job of that.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Anyone else? All right, read the resolution, please.
Resolution declaring the necessity for levying tax exceeding 10 mil limitation, certifying 1.75 mils for fire protection and emergency services levy questions specified herein to the Hamilton County Auditor.
Any comments, questions on the resolution? Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Resolution 2022-4 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
As has been standard city policy for many years, when we bid out our road program every year, we allow the low bidder the option to secure the contract for the following year if he'll get a written affidavit verifying that they will maintain the same unit prices. This allows the city to lock in a price. It allows us to expedite the bidding process. It allows us to expedite the paving program and allows us to save funding on that bidding. The 2021 low bidder and the contractor for the city's paving in 2021 was J.K. Muir Corporation. The city budgeted $1,049,750. We had a carryover of $268,294, which will be added to the $1.2 million, which is in the budget that City Council approved, for a total road paving, the highest in the history of the city, of $1,468,294. Because we are paving more streets and our window is somewhat dictated by school and a few other items, I've asked the Public Works Department and City Engineer to hopefully we move this process along. We can get ready to go earlier. So just for reference, if you look at the city's 107 lane miles, we're associating $13,722 this year per lane mile. That's a significant amount of money. Just a quick summary, the reason why there was a carryover was because we adjusted the paving on State Route 48 due to the sewer line by the time the numbers were done, it was too late to pick a street for 21. It would have been too late in the season. Once the weather gets too cool, we don't get the same kind of paving results, and we didn't pick a street and want to go over. So we automatically, which is standard policy, we carry that money over. That money doesn't go away. So that's why the larger budget in this year. So we would, by approving this resolution, the 2022 contract would go to J.K. Muir. And I always get this question, why don't I already know what streets are being paved? Because we wait until the winter hits, and then the beginning of the process begins where all the roads are assessed. We don't have the winters we used to have, but this is when the roads are deteriorating, and whether they coincide, but we go strictly by need. If you recall, this city council, majority of you all were on city council at the time that we brought in Stantec. That was the Ghostbusters type looking machine that gave us an analysis and allowed city council to really see how delaying any road after a certain period of time expedites its decay exponentially once it becomes alligator. What you don't see is the water underneath the roadway. When a road becomes alligator. Us getting on top of this would get us someday in the future be able to get back to our goal, which a city of 107 lane miles, we should be at $850,000. But obviously we're playing catch up. I will add one item that because the very popular Main and Chestnut Street project was shut down for the winter, you'll not only have all the paving done in this 1.4 million, you'll also have all the paving of Main Street, Hill Street, and parts of Wall and parts of Chestnut. So this, I won't guess, because you can't actually say how many roads equate to 1.4, because you pick a suburb street, well then more money goes into the curbs. So it's hard for me to say 1.4 will give you this many lane miles. It's not hard, it's impossible. But it will be a significant amount of paving will be done. And doing this now, I will sign the contract literally tomorrow. That will get us all geared up. When the plants turn on, we can start hitting some of the streets that aren't so impacted by bus traffic. That was a long drawn out thing, but this is, I believe very strongly in what this council's doing and putting this money towards our roads. So this is a big deal. This is a big deal, so.
Well, I think especially when you think back to a few years ago, mostly because of how the economy was, we were spending in the 300s on our road program.
Yes.
So thank goodness we're where we are now. Any questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Butler.
Dave, are we still using that Stantec data to help us assess which roads come first?
Yep. Cindy really pushed that. And so we still use it. Some things surprise you. Some roads kick in worse than others. We will be in a subdivision. Mr. Bruce knows that. We'll be in a subdivision and we may want to finish a cul-de-sac or do that. And maybe that was a program. For example, Main Street under normal conditions would have been paved back when I first got here, 2015, but obviously because of water lines, city applied for a pretty significant water line grant application to replace a significant stretch of water mains on Cherokee up in the Heights. We won't touch that roadway, even though that roadway may very well, per the Stantec report and per its current conditions, fall in line to be paved. Those roads get pushed. That's why the residents of Main Street are so happy, because they've waited so long and now they're getting a new road. I've never seen a roadway disturb more residents with less complaints than what we got this year on Main Street. What a mess it was. Nothing all year. So because they know
the
that's
second question I have,
sorry.
On the Main Street project you were talking about, I know our council funded that project last year, but this road budget for 2022 will be used for that, or
No,
are we bringing
that's
forward from that
complete.
funding from last year?
No, none of this 1.468294 will be used at all for Main Street.
Oh, good.
That's
Okay.
50. That's all being
It's
funded
already
through
incorporated.
50% grant and a 50% zero interest loan that Cindy secured through the Iowa Public Works Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Vice Mayor?
I note, one of the important and appealing facts of your memo that I think militate in favor of approving this resolution is that the rates hold steady as they were in 21. And in this era of inflation. I assume that's a benefit to the city. And then the second point I wanted to make, and perhaps you can respond, is I assume we've enjoyed good relationship with J.K. Muir. They've done adequate or good work, and they've been responsive and cooperative with the city. Can you comment on that?
Yes, first of all, there is petroleum factors into paving, so any kind of oil-based, anything that's involved, you can imagine how the prices could increase. Yes, we've been having good work. They in 2021, they snipped the pad connector, what we call our loop detectors. That's why the residents in downtown are hearing the horns. On their own dime, of course, they're working to redo all the loop detectors. They're very stand up. I think we're in their wheelhouse when we bid these out traditionally, and we go for some of the larger companies that you see doing I-75 and some of those roadways. They just don't give us competitive dollars. So we found that J.K. Muir gives us a good quality. They're extremely adaptable. Hey, by the way, we're not spending $268,000 that we promised you. Oh, okay. So that's a big part of it. You're the reason the horns are, for those of you who know, the city has a quiet zone in the downtown district. That quiet zone can get pulled at any moment if there's any modification to how our train horns are function. So with that, that's why you're hearing those. Those should be fixed pretty soon. I think they've done a really good job. Their curbing work is important too. That was something we had a few years ago. I won't mention the contractor, but the curbing work was very subpar, and we had to go back and do some replacements.
Any other questions, comments? Read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with J.K. Muir Corp. for the City of Loveland 2022 street repair program.
Comments on the resolution? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Resolution 2022-5 is approved by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
This next set of legislation is simply to approve a grant that the city was awarded to build a new gazebo in Nisbet Park. The gazebo, as you know, would go in the same general vicinity of the one that we removed this summer. City's Public Works removed. That one was harboring insects and stinging young children on a fairly regular basis. We removed that gazebo. I left a picture just in case you've ever wondered how unattractive it was. So the city, as part of one of the first phases of the Nisbet Park master plan, was the gazebo area. This would be a smaller gazebo, much larger than this one, in the 20 to 25 foot range, in the same general vicinity of the existing gazebo. The goal here was to do sort of a splash item quickly. The city submitted an application in June of 2021 following authorization from City Council. We applied for $85,000 towards a $115,000 gazebo project. The city was awarded $85,000, which happens to be the total amount of funding allocated through the Nature Works program for Clermont County. So we were able to secure all of the funding for the project. The grant application following council's execution would be authorized and sent back. The goal of this gazebo, along with the fact that it'll be elevated somewhat, of course, fully handicap accessible, the goal of this gazebo is that it will really open up those smaller concerts, weddings. We plan on full electric, full interior lighting, really something that'll look nice in the evenings. Chief Huber and I spoke about some kind of irrigation system over there, so it'll be easy to maintain all the landscaping at the base of this gazebo. I will caution you that the one that I'm using on page 2 of my memo is probably not exactly the way it's going to look. We haven't modified that since the public meetings that we had where everyone liked the gazebo. They liked the size of the gazebo. They liked the fact that it would be elevated. They liked it being along the bike trail, but they felt that one was too modern. So we will be deviating from that. I'm working on those plans that I'll take to the rec board. And then we would bring those back to City Council. Meanwhile, so that this is being positioned properly, because sort of like if you build a house and that first corner is wrong, well, if I build this park project that will be going on probably long after I'm gone, and we don't space this properly, it'll be a ripple effect. Because as city council knows, you authorized me to submit an application for the seating area, which is along the bike trail too. This is an extremely nice area, seen similar to what's down in Washington Park and other areas where you have established paver type concrete areas with established seating. You can have small meetings in there. It's very neat right along the bike trail. And final, one of the reasons we're doing sort of stipping along the edges is because, as you also know, we're looking at widening Harrison and putting sidewalks along the south side of Harrison. Well, that's all well and good. Sidewalks are great. Widening that road is great. But what also is included in that project is all of the storm pipes. Not many people know this, nor would you care, but the vast majority of the drainage that happens in the downtown area from West Loveland back to First Street and from Tim and Kay's home all the way back to Harrison goes down Harrison towards the Eagles and hangs a right and goes through the middle of Nisbet Park. All of those pipes are way undersized. So obviously I'm trying to nip around the edges, because when that project gets funded in full, all of Nisbet Park, it's going to look like right through the middle of it. So that's why we're sort of trying to beat around the edges and do that. So again, this is only to approve the grant agreement. I'll be back with the design following recommendation from the rec board.
Any comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Blair?
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy, on page 67 of the packet, it seems to indicate that the gazebo marked by the red dot, is that where it's going to be?
No.
It's going to be back over more or less where it is now?
No, that red dot's just a Google Map indicator. I just typed. That's just that's like, what do you call those Google Map pinpoint thing? What do you call a pin?
It's a pin.
It's a pin. No, it would be right along where the T and the R is in the word
Okay.
trail.
Okay, pretty much where it is now.
Where it was, yes.
Okay.
But larger, elevated, nicer. Sort of, I really sort of envision those smaller concerts, sort of that Austin, Texas feel. You know, that you don't need the amphitheater.
Yeah.
Sort of, you know,
Okay, that's fine.
California-y. So,
Duly noted.
yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Butler?
I know over the years, Dave, there's been talk of maybe repositioning the main amphitheater, different posture, as one of the, and maybe that's been discussed in your group as well, John. Does the placement of the gazebo have any impact on that, if that is decided?
Yeah, so the gazebo was specifically placed, and that's why I'm cooling my jets, because I have a habit of working with Lynn to make sure that where this goes is in line with the master plan. The amphitheater part of the master plan would take the amphitheater, which currently faces away from the bike trail, move it to the corner and turn it sideways, actually moving it even farther away from the existing gazebo, allowing these two to really work separately. I have probably the worst view from my office, but one thing I do see is all the girls that are high school seniors getting their picture taken on their train. I would see this gazebo being a very much of a Photoshop, but it's a little creepy, but I don't mean it that way. I just mean that's very active.
Sorry, we were all thinking it.
But we plan on full electric, all the hookups, proper lighting, everything to be done with it. So,
Okay. Thanks. So it would accommodate repositioning?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hart?
Yeah, I just want to say I'm really, really excited about this. This is being the kind of the point project for this whole Nisbet master plan. Mike Melton here and the rest of the rec board that doing some really good work, and Nisbet Park being a city with a river, we take pride in the river and our green spaces and our bike trail and being outdoors and being, everybody being outside and spending time with their families, and having a park that is a true gem of the city is really exciting. I don't think Nisbet Park is that right now, but I think from the community engagement events that got done with the Nisbet Park plan, master plan, and the drawings that are there, it's a really, really exciting prospect to have that whole park redone to be truly commensurate with what the city is now. So I'm just really excited about it. I'm really excited to get the project started and And I'm not excited for the drainage project that's going to have to follow it, but I think in the end, it's going to be a real positive for the city. I'm excited about it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Vice Mayor?
Just in keeping with other projects, Dave, I just wanted to say thanks and for pursuing grant funding for this. If it goes as planned here, 75% of it will be from the grant and 25% from the city, and that seems like a really good deal.
Anyone else? All right, read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an ODNR NatureWorks grant agreement for the Nesbit Park Gazebo project.
Any comment on the resolution itself? Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Resolution 2022-6 is approved by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
So one of the CIP items, so when we do a capital improvement program, we do capital improvement projects and capital improvement equipment. One of the items that got shelved in 2021 was the proposal for a purchase of a new salt truck for the city. The city council through their budgeting allocated $150,000 for a new salt truck. It would be the 6th salt truck in the city's fleet. This would be the most in the history of the city, allowing us to be extremely more efficient. Remember that these salt trucks do a lot more than simply do the salt. We have our own water system, so obviously these are dealing with all the piping, the road work, everything that the city does. These are also converted to brush and leaf pickup trucks throughout the year. So once the budget was done, we sent out Thomas, he's a maintenance mechanic, and Scott Wisby to look for available trucks. Remember that the city, when we purchase through a state contracted bidder, we don't have to bid these out. The state of Ohio has already done the bidding, has awarded contracts to XYZ people, Chevys, Fords, police cars, everything. So what we found out was that we were way under budget at 150, and maybe we would see it sometime in 2023. Through their persistence, and thanks to an order canceled from another community, the city was given the option to get a new international truck for slightly over the budgeted amount. One of the things about this, which is sort of the sweet part of the is that this will be, of all 6, to be the first truck that the city has with a stainless steel bed. Big deal. Well, I think you saw how big of a deal stainless steel was when the fire department saved $500,000 by able to remount onto a chassis the body of the rescue unit because it was made out of stainless steel. $500,000 saved to this city by reusing. So this truck will certainly long last everyone. So 154 means I'm $4,807 over. Typically for projects such as these, I divide those amongst 3 funds, water cap, stormwater, and street maintenance, which is our job is to try to make sure that everyone pays for it equally, including enterprise funds. Enterprise funds would be the stormwater and the water cap. So with that, it would be $1,602 overage from each of those, of which we would each. This is a great deal for the city, and we will be able to get this thing in line relatively quickly.
Any questions, comments?
Just a quick question.
Mr. Blair?
Where's the truck coming from?
It's from Rush Truck Centers over in in Cincinnati.
Okay.
I'm not sure where
That's okay.
Highway
I just
Drive.
wanted to- since
Yeah.
it's-
Vice Mayor?
Just a question I had is, does it include a plow, or do we attach our own plow?
We have a brand new backup plow that we'll be putting in there.
Mr. Butler?
Dave, I note that on page 80 of the packet, the warranty period for chassis 12 months, engine 24 months, transmission 36 months. And I guess I would ask the chief as well, for this kind of heavy-duty equipment, is that standard? And that seems like a pretty light warranty for a $150,000 piece of equipment, but is that kind of typical?
It's pretty standard. We use heavy-duty diesel engines, as does the Public Works Department. So it's not unusual for us to get 200,000 miles. Mileage-wise, hour-wise, it's more the 50,000 hours kind of thing. But yeah, I wouldn't extend a warranty on
Okay.
a vehicle like that because it's been my experience and over the years that the trucks way outlast the warranties.
Do they? Okay, very good, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a purchase agreement with Rush Truck Centers for the purchase of a 2022 International Salt Truck.
Any comments on the legislation? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Resolution 2022-7 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy.
I'll try to be quicker on this one. As City Council recalls, after City Council completed the first reading on the 2022 budget, I had the pleasure of meeting with some of the residents of some subdivisions up on Loveland Miamiville Road and Sugar Tree, Steeplechase, and Huntington. And their message was very clear and extremely polite, was would you please consider running sidewalks to create the connectivity, which is part of the comprehensive plan, which is wrapping up. And I will say I'm totally guilty. This was on our plate back in 2014 when I first got here. We've pushed the can down the road. We explored some various funding. We've explored potentially working with Miami Township. At the end of the day, the straight Safe Routes to School program by ODOT is not a good alternative for this. And it is the most logical extension for this city to do from a sidewalk standpoint. It would allow 3 subdivisions to connect to St. Columban and into the downtown district. So it was time to simply move forward. So what we committed to doing, and City Council went ahead and accepted an amendment to their budget after already doing a first reading. We added funding for us to begin the engineering this year. With that in mind, I wanted to begin it early in the year. So we secured phase 1 of the engineering, which is all the preliminary work. So all the surveying, all of the utility relocation. It will then determine the route. Where will we need easements? Where won't we? How will we have to modify various aprons? Where maybe a tree needs to come down? All of the things. Where do all the water lines? It's the down and dirty, gritty part of that. I would anticipate that I'll be back hopefully in May, early June with phase 2, which is the construction drawing phase of this. Through that, we'll know this is going to be an expensive project, just like Chief Huber and I have worked over time to slowly add the GPS signals to every downtown traffic, every city traffic signal that recognizes emergency vehicles. This year it's completed. I would anticipate in 2023, the 2023 budget will include the first phase of these sidewalks, largely likely starting at the St. Columban portion because you start where the stormwater is. That being said, so this is simply a proposal for $19,400 for the beginning phase of the surveying. This will be all the easements, physical limitations, utility relocations, apron modification. This will set the tone for everything onward. We will still be well within the $80,000 engineering costs that City Council included. We would anticipate. So why aren't you doing it all at once? Well, you can't set a feasibility or cost estimate for phase 2 until you know everything is involved. So this is all the exploratory phase part of it, and the sooner the better. That way, when we're doing the 2023 budget, we'll have that first phase to go.
Any comments, questions? Mr. Butler?
Dave, the memo suggests that we're talking about approximately 2,500 linear feet.
Yes, sir.
Is there an industry standard? And I know we're going to get exact cost estimates. No, and I'm not asking, but from a ballpark, is there an industry estimate for like X dollars per linear foot for sidewalk? Just to get a kind of general idea of what kind of expense we're talking about.
I'll have to get back with you on that because
That's fine.
It just varies so much because everyone should probably know the sidewalks is the cheapest part of the project. The stormwater and all the catch basins and the curb and gutter work, because we're certainly not going to do this halfway. It's going to, and all the aprons, everything adjusted. But I can easily get with Nick from Choice One and say, Nick, typically curb and gutter street with stormwater and catch basins that are required, what roughly will it be? And then
That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Vice Mayor?
Just from looking at page 90, am I seeing that right, that at least a fair portion of Loveland Miamiville Road will have sidewalks on both sides of the street?
sort of just staying in our corporation limits, yes, ultimately, I asked them to give us the parameters for that. That would be the final phase where we would go on to the LECC on the other side of the roadway. Is what you can see from on page 90, that black hashed line is the township borders. At some point in time, we could certainly work and reach out to Miami Township, but in the beginning phase, you would probably working from Oakland/48 upward, would be southward up. Miami Township wouldn't be getting involved until later phases. But yes, ultimately, we would envision potentially sidewalks being on. I just asked them to include it in the parameters. It would be the final phase if we so choose to do that.
Anyone else? Read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Choice One Engineering for engineering and design services for the Loveland-Miamiville Road sidewalk installation project.
Any comments, questions on the resolution? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Resolution 2022-8 is approved by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mayor. Before you is a resolution drafted and memo drafted by City Engineer Cindy Klopfenstein for a proposal to clean the exterior of the city's 3 water tanks. Concurrent with the city's procurement policy, she sent out for 3 bids to get 2 responded. One was National Wash Authority, also known as Midwest Mobile Washers, for $23,400. The second was from Pittsburgh Tank and Tower Group for $90,110. You may ask why the disparity. Well, the simple reason, and I asked the same question, the simple reason was that Pittsburgh Tank and Tower specializes in the reconstruction and the creation of water towers, so I suppose that there's a little bit more costs in their personnel. That's kind of all I got. It's not a diminished value in the type of work. In fact, the city used Midwest Mobile Washers previously and have been satisfied with their product. The application. I don't know if you've seen how these are done. I was curious, so I YouTubed the thing. And what they do is they get it's like a scissor lift, but it's a really tall lift that they get up there in a bucket, and they just take a pressure washer to it with like low PSI and some bleach, and they scrub off the mildew, and then they put on a coating to keep mildew from growing. Now it's not a permanent thing, but it does hold up and make the tank last a little bit longer, including the paint that is on there. So very good product. Also, from a fiscal standpoint, the low bid came in under budget. Currently, the budget is $25,500. It came in at $23,400 was the low bid. And as such, city staff recommends adoption of the presented resolution.
All right. Any comments, questions? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a guy that still washes my car in the driveway because I think car washes are too expensive. It's just over the years I've been on council, we spend a lot of money on cleaning these, and it's necessary. I'm just wondering, have we ever considered, or could some examination be done of whether or not bringing a scissor truck in that we would rent and using city personnel can do this, or is it so unique and so specialized that you got to contract it?
That's a good question. I'm not actually sure. I would tend to say that it's fairly unique and would take special equipment, given the scope when you get up there and getting around to it. Because I don't think it's one. The ones that I saw, it wasn't one scissor lift; it was 3 at a time. Now that doesn't. It was just an example, so I'm not actually sure, but it may warrant looking into in the future. Not a bad idea.
Maybe the Vice Mayor could.
I was going to say, I'm going to volunteer Ted Phelps to be the guy up on that scissor crane.
You seem very interested.
Take out a big picture of calls.
Yes, right. I wouldn't want to be up there.
I would imagine the insurance we talked about insurance last meeting. I would imagine the liability insurance to send our own guys, most likely at the point of a gun, up a 5 or 6 or 7 story scissor lift to squirt towers would be cost prohibitive in comparison to jobbing it out.
Our workers' comp premiums would go up, I'm sure.
It's a good idea, Ted.
A lot higher than the tower.
All right. Any other comments? Read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with National Wash Authority doing business as Midwest Mobile Washers for exterior cleaning of the water towers located at Lever Park, Commerce Drive, and Union Cemetery Road.
Any comment on the resolution? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Resolution 2022-9 is approved by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy.
So the city's city's water treatment plant, Betteray Water Plant, includes a well field. That well field includes 3 well pumps, 2 of which are needed for the city to maintain maintain water flow during our high use periods of time. We have 1 for redundancy. Through a chain of events, all not good, on December 18th, the city lost 2 of those well pumps and were not able to produce water to the requirements of the city. Even given the water in the air at the time, the city's towers, it was sort of an all hands on deck, immediate need. The wiring that feeds those had gone bad. It was shorting out and completely fried 2 pumps. 1 pump was air freighted in sight the next day. The other pump was sent out for repairs. It was a pretty significant amount of work that puts the city at potential jeopardy to maintain fire flow. Our other options that the city has, which would be potentially to turn the switches on with our emergency water flows, our emergency connections, of which we have 3. Just out of curiosity, I looked at the last time we used water from Clermont County when we were working on the White Pillars Tower. Our total bill for that use of water, which granted it was a longer period of time, was $59,988. So it is a wonderful resource, but we don't flip those switches willy-nilly just for the fun of it, because those, obviously that comes from a price. Actually, near Mr. Bruce's neighborhood, we have the connection with the city of Cincinnati. Similar rates, actually, they just went up. So with that in mind, I had to exceed my spending limit. The city charter, I'm only allowed to spend $15,000. Given the timing and the need to get this working quick, I authorized expenditures in excess of my $15,000. I have not obviously paid that expense. So I'm bringing forth to the city what we would call as ratifying that expenditure, which will allow us to pay the bills. This is sort of price that you pay when you own a water system, especially a water system, even more so than a sewer system. Your options are either to flip the switch, call an emergency council meeting, beginning running up the bill, or take all steps necessary to get all repairs done as quick as possible. And we chose to get all repairs done as quick as possible. So with that, the total cost of the bill was $22,607.
Any comments or questions? Mr. Butler?
Yeah, I don't have an issue, and I'm glad we're able to get that resolved quickly and expeditiously. But it raises the larger question, Dave. Are there concerns about Betty Ray generally? As the description of the electrical issue there suggests that there might be some defects, some issues that need to be addressed, maybe proactively.
Yes, the underground wiring had gone bad, which was the problem, and the rain at the time obviously also began to short it out. That's a great comment, and we have replaced 1,500 feet of the wiring, got 1 new motor in. Before the other motor was rehabbed, we were able to turn on the redundant motor because we desperately need to be able to maintain 2 pumps at the same time. And then the other motor, which we had rebuilt, was complete. The big chunk of this work was that underground wiring. I'd have to get with Trevor to make sure I can't say enough. I had the same situation in Richmond where you've got that company that will drop everything and help you out. And not only that, do it in extremely fair pricing. Trevor Electric was on the scene like that. The amount of time that he saved the city, time and money, being able to locate and all the investigative work that another electrician would have fumbled and stumbled for a long time to even get his bearings straight was a real treat. I know that that is a real benefit for any city who has a water function and doesn't have trained electricians on staff to have someone like Trevor Electric.
Second question. My recollection was that at a council meeting, maybe in late summer, we entertained a discussion of maybe seeking a grant to replace one of the motors. Is that?
No, I was asking you for, I submitted a grant for a new generator.
New generator.
I did.
Does it have any relation to what happened here?
No,
Okay.
it doesn't.
And we didn't get the grant, I guess.
No, I didn't get it.
Okay. Because I think my question at that point was, if we don't get the grant, do we need to review and explore other alternatives?
We need to pay for it.
Right.
It's a funny thing that.
Because that's one of our assets that we want to protect.
I mean, I've been writing grants since 1989, and I got to tell you, it still amazes me as powerful an argument that we can make in those grant applications for a new generator that would work automatic, not be diesel powered, not require so much manpower, that would assure that this city, any drop in electric would automatically go. I mean, I fail every time, and I go through FEMA, and it's a whole thing where I have to do a cost-benefit analysis, and then I fail. Because I think
Nobody bats 1,000.
No, I'm just saying. I just think that at some point we need to just get it fixed.
Right. That's my point.
That thing is
okay. Thank you.
Mr. Blair.
Dave, how much would it cost to buy a spare motor, a pump? I'm asking it rhetorically, just only to suggest, as dependent as we are in the circumstance, it would even help Traber if we had to call him in again, if we had that motor. I mean, they had to go chasing off down to Tennessee or something.
North Carolina.
North Carolina to get that motor, and then we ended up having the other one rebuilt. I think we could, depending on the cost, I think we could afford to have a motor, a crate motor, boxed up and covered in plastic in case we need it sitting someplace.
I think
just a suggestion.
Yeah, there's a lesson to be learned from everything. And if I'm sitting here next year and we're doing the same thing, we obviously need to look at what we could do to do that. And that's what we thought we were trying to do with the generator too. So I'll get with Scott tomorrow.
Sounds good. Any other comments? Read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing payment to Trevor Electrical Contractors, Inc. for emergency water system repairs.
Any comment on the resolution? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Resolution 2022-10 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy.
So I don't probably have enough time to go into a lot of detail on this because I gabbled about too many other things, but I would say we all know that as in every community, not everyone agrees on everything. But I do think if I had to pick the one thing that everyone in this community agrees upon, it's the darn bike trail crossing. And so Kathy, the mayor, and I have been talking about this for a long, long time. We've been using, Chief Ray's been getting crossing guards and everything possible. So back in 2019, latter part of 2019, I reached out to TEC. TEC is sort of our main traffic engineer. We use Choice One for this, we use Cindy for this, but we've really been focusing on TEC for our traffic. And I said, could you look at what it would take for us to really get this in a position where cars know what they're supposed to be doing, pedestrians/bikes know what they're supposed to be doing. And the proposal came in. And it is of the ilk that I feel I'm sort of setting the table and I'm inviting the city, this engineer, Ed Williams, to come and talk to you. So I wanted to sort of set the tone, give you the report, explain to you with it. Is it going to seem too cluttered? Is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? But in a nutshell, One of the things that we did in downtown in 2015 or slash 2016 was we made our 3 downtown traffic signals smart. What that means is they talk to each other. No one really knows, but what you used to get on Carl Brown, as people come under the trestle, they're all wanting to turn left, go over the bridge, then they want to go down Riverside Drive. That has changed because the traffic signals know that when it's backing up. They feel it, they adjust it. They also know when to make it dominant. Why give traffic on Carl Brown any green light when it knows there's no car? Well, what's the other side item to that is these traffic signals could speak to these 2 traffic signals. So when Carl Brown has a green light, that is at the time when West Loveland traffic is at its minimum, because X percentage of the traffic on Carl Brown is making a left turn. Thus, it is the best time for the pedestrian traffic to move. So that is when the traffic signals across West Loveland would be red, and the pedestrians, and it's a shape of a person, it's a shape of a bike, would have a green. I've talked to Chief Ray about this. We know that there would have to be an officer down there, maybe Cruz or somebody, but you have to enforce it. But the problem with this, and I want total honesty, is the problem with this is it does not work unless there's also a light or something on Railroad and at the Jackrabbit parking. Otherwise, they're taking rights, they wouldn't even see it. So I'm just setting the table for you. I thought I'd give you the proposal now, and then Ed would be at the next meeting to answer your questions. He is a traffic expert. Why are we doing this now? Because there's the potential that the city could apply for funding to fund this entire project through the Ohio Department of Transportation Safety Program. And the Ohio Department of Transportation Safety Program has paid for 2 trestle projects. It's paid for the crossing up at Phillips Park. It paid for the flashing speed limit sign on State Route 48. Heck, it paid for the buttons that we have now on the cross guard. So it is a legitimate potential, but I certainly want people to know what comes with this package. And that was all. There's really because I won't be able to answer questions because I don't really know the answers. But Ed would, and we've asked Ed to come next week. Next meeting worked better for him, so I thought Cindy and I thought we'd sort of tee it up for you. We don't really have any answers. I would ask you to save those for Ed. But if you have any questions in between, if there's anything you don't understand in this, send me an email for it to Cindy so she can answer it for you, because I won't understand it. But I do really think this is the best we're ever going to do to address this problem. Cross carts. I mean, let's be honest. It helps, but it's not really what we're about. So I think
No questions.
I'm not saying you can't ask questions.
Does anybody have comments?
I'm just saying I don't really know the answers.
Mr. Butler.
Yeah, let me just say, I mean, there's an old saying, rather than curse the darkness, let's light a candle. And, everybody complains about it. And finally, we're starting the process of doing something about it. So good. That's good.
Yeah.
And look forward to hearing from Mr. Wood.
Anyone else? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, just, the key intersection of safety and traffic flow. I'll be interested in examining how this will be impacting that. And from your memo, it suggests that it would have a positive effect on that. So.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, Gus Schmitzmiller, who runs all of the bike trails for Ohio Department of Natural Resources, just an incredibly nice man. We've stood down there a couple times and discussed it, and he says, Dave, you got to do a tunnel, a bridge, or a massive bypass all along. And I said, well, I'm never going to be able to do a bypass. His theory would be way down on Lyons Road, basically, if you're a biker and you have no intentions of ever stopping, that you'd build this massive bypass. I'm trying to be a little more realistic about what could be done. Little Miami Conservancy is not going to allow us to run a bike trail down along the river, and it's going to be out of service during I'm trying to be realistic about it. Gus is a great guy, but come on, we're not building the tunnel. If you build a bridge, you got to build elevators. This is sort of silly. This seems to me to be our best option. So.
Anyone else? All right, there are various other, Mayor's Court Building and Zoning. We don't have anything on Council Manic. There are committee minutes and reports. Anybody have any comments on those? And then the last thing, I guess, is just notice that we do have a special meeting scheduled for Saturday, February 19th, 2022 at 9 a.m. What's that? Oh, we have to schedule it. We need to all right, so we need a motion to schedule that meeting. Would someone care to make such a motion? It's this one.
Sure, I'll move that we schedule the special city council goal-setting session, scheduled for Saturday, February 19th.
It's on page 148.
What's that? Yeah, I closed the packet page, so
God's
I didn't. Saturday,
February
February
19th.
19th at 9 a.m.
Second.
All right. Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
And that will be at that HCC Information Technology Center located on Cottonwood. All right, just a couple announcements. Our offices will be closed next Monday for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And Homerama will be hosting a groundbreaking ceremony on Thursday, January 20th at 10:30 a.m. at the Chimney Ridge site. Anyone else have any announcements, comments? All right, can we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Yes. I'm not going for